This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Today we're interviewing Joachim Cooder. Thank you for being part of Fish Out of Water podcast. Tell us who you are. What do you do?
My name is Joachim Cooder, and I am on tour right now in England and Wales. I just put out a new record called Dreamers Motel, and this is our big UK tour.
Why do you call it Dreamers Motel?
Well, that came from something... there's this little hotel north of me in California, and my parents used to take me there when I was little. And when I became a teenager, I used to go with friends, and it was really cheap, and you could get a whole bungalow for like $200. And a train went through it, and you could go swimming out to a little dock, and there was basically nothing you couldn't do. And I always figured I would take my kids there one day, and then of course, it got sold, and these greedy developers kind of like tore the place apart, and then they ran out of money. So for years, when you would drive past it on the 101, you would see it looked like giant carcasses they were like these beached animals just rotting. And it was so infuriating, and it kind of, the concept is like a place you can't go back to. You can only go back in your mind, and you kind of go from room to room, and you relive all these memories, and that's the only way you can do it. And I think like everybody kind of might have their own version of that, or it's a person, but people have their own, sense of that, I think.
Are you reliving ghosts?
Yeah, sure. I've taken people there who are no longer alive, which is crazy to think about. And when I go through those rooms in my mind, they're all there. And our younger selves are also ghosts in a way. So yeah, there's ghosts in the Dreamers Motel.
How did you record the album, and which songs do you feel fit the memory of the place?
Well, I made a full, I recorded 12 or 13 songs, and they were all done in different ways. Some start with my electric mbira, and I kind of I pluck it and get into a kind of trance-like state, and then I write the song from there. But then sometimes I'll be on tour, and I'll take my iPad out during sound check, and I'll record somebody just doing whatever they're doing, and then I'll take it back with me and I'll mess with it, and that becomes a bed for the song. But what I ended up doing, once I decided that the title should be Dreamers Motel, I took away all the songs that didn't fit under that umbrella. And so I was left with 7 songs that are tied together by that concept. And the ones that were a little more like veered off the highway onto a different exit and went to some other place, I said, that's just going to be another project, another day.
Can you give us an example of how you record a song? How do you create a song?
Okay, well, one example for the Dreamers Motel title track, that was my dad on guitar. It starts off with him. We were in a concert hall on tour. It was him and Rosanne Cash, and they were doing all songs of Johnny Cash, her dad. And he always likes to get there early when nobody's around, and he likes to just start playing, and he gets a feeling of the room. And so we're there always like an hour or two before anybody else, and he was just playing. And so I just placed my iPad by his amp, and this was this really big concert hall in Chicago, like 3,000 seater. And so the sound you get, you would never get that in a recording studio. It was just so, it was like a lonely man, but in this great large room. And then I took that, and I have this little program I like on my iPad that I mess with called Sampler. And I just found it a little place. I liked what he did, and I looped it, and then I pitched it up and kind of have this fast version going in a subtle way underneath it. And then I just basically listened to it over and over and over and over and over again, day in and day out, until a melody, a line over that, like it presents itself to me. And then the whole, from there, the lyrics come, and then I go into a real studio and then layer everything else on top of that.
What did you learn from your father in terms of songwriting and performance?
I think the most...
Ray Cooder.
Oh, yes, Ray Cooder. I think more than songwriting, I think the most valuable lesson I learned from him is to the importance of being like an empathetic, sympathetic ear. Like when you go into a situation with people and you listen to what they're doing, you don't come in with like a big, like, I am the great Ray Cooder and you shall do what I do. It's more like you guys are, everybody's are musicians in the same place doing the same thing, even if everybody speaks different languages. And from that standpoint, you can really connect with other people. And that, I think, is what it's really about. It's not about celebrity or about fame, any of that. That just muddies the water. That's just a whole other thing. That's not like what I think a true musician is. I mean, it can be. Don't get me wrong, but the best experiences I've had are with just, session guys, touring guys who are just the most interesting people in the world. And I think that's the most valuable lesson.
You started playing drums when you were very young. Was that the primary instrument? And how did you pick up that rhythm back then?
Well, I got very obsessed at a very young age, probably 4 years old, with his drummer, Jim Keltner, who is like the world-renowned, like ultimate guy. And, he's on Imagine by John Lennon and everything else. And this was in the 80s, the early 80s. And he had all these electronics and all this gleaming silver hardware. And he would put little colored strips of tape on everything, I think just because it looked good. And everything was, to me, it was so appealing. There was all these little lights going. He had all these technological things. I didn't know what it was at the time. And so I would kind of climb into his drum set somehow and just stare at him. And guitar never, ever spoke to me. It was just always drums. And which is a good thing, because then I was able to play with my dad at a really young age. I could accompany him. So it was like a little family band for a long time.
How'd you learn the timing?
I think you just, if it's something that calls to you, you're aware of the rhythm and the feel, and that's a big part of it. Like, you're aware of other drummers and their feel and the way they hit and the way they, or how they don't, where they don't play. And so you begin to love a certain way of playing and a certain feel. And for me, it was always like a lighter touch and like rather than a big, strong, manly power drummer.
And how did the Buena Vista Social Club come about?
Well, that was a total fluke deal, because it was going to be these African musicians from West Africa coming to Cuba, and there was going to be this exploration of the roots of Afro-Cuban music and all these different things. And they didn't get their visas. So on the first day of the session, we had to change course. And my dad said, let's find some pre-revolutionary Cuban guys who played in the 40s, that pre-Castro style. And they all just kind of walked up, and out of history they came, and this whole thing happens. It was very accidental.
How many takes did it take to record one song back then? And was it all live in the studio?
It was all very live. Everybody sat in a circle and played, and I would think that nothing was done more than a couple takes. A few things were overdubbed on back home. You know, some little things. My dad played a little extra guitar that maybe we didn't have in Cuba because we traveled so lightly, not knowing what to expect. I just had like 2 little things with me, and he probably had just a few things. On subsequent trips, we brought down more things once we got our license to go down for a year, and then we showed up with a bunch of big flight cases and brought all sorts of things. But for that initial recording, it was just 2 weeks, and that was it.
How did it feel?
Well, at the time, it feels like everything else feels, which is you go on these trips and make these records, and it always feels good. You are not sitting there thinking like, do you guys realize like the history that we are making right now? Like, it is so crazy. It's not like that. It's sort of like you see what's happening, and you figure out how you can fit in or not fit in each thing with all these, incredible ultimate players. And then you go home, and then pretty soon you do another thing. And then all of a sudden, Buena Vista becomes like this global sensation.
And you toured with them, right?
I only did the 2 main shows that are in the movie, which is Amsterdam and then Carnegie Hall. And then they went on to just tour all over the place. But I wasn't a part of that.
You also performed with Latin American musicians. One thing, there's a guy from Nick from World Circuit Records. How instrumental was him?
Yeah, Nick, he was incredibly instrumental. He was always very instrumental in all the projects that he brought to the table, and was always down there. And we were all in the recording booth all the time together, going to eat afterwards. It was quite a time.
Can you remember the first song you played ever?
First song I played ever. Well, there were certain songs I remember that I would always get excited when my dad would start playing them on the guitar, and I would rush over to play with him on the drums. And I think one of the earliest ones I can remember is I Fought the Law, and the Law Won. That was one that would always come up, like every 5 to 10 years, like it would get unearthed, and I would hear him playing it, and I would just be like, all right. There was something about it as a little boy that just really was exciting.
Your father played with many giants, from John Lee Hooker to the Rolling Stones, to many, 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 many sessions in various genres. Did you ever hear that he actually wrote the riff to Gimme Shelter?
Well, I mean, there is, he doesn't really talk about the Rolling Stones too much. That's not like, I don't think that's like a fun conversation thing. I never ask him about it. We just talk about like joyful memories. And I don't know where that one comes down for him or what truly happened. We don't get into it.
What is it like living with such a great musician? Does Ray play every day? Do you pick up things as he plays? Do you play with him?
Yes, we growing up, we played. We had all our instruments were in our house growing up, and so I had drums set up, and he had his guitars, and we played quite often, and now it's a little different. I have kids now, and so he's very involved with that and plays for them. So they're getting to have a good experience hearing him play the banjo and all that good stuff. And I would say we've been recording together and touring together up until pretty recently. We did the Taj Mahal, him and Taj Mahal made a record, and we did that one in my living room. So up until the last few years, there's always been something going on.
What's the best way to record when you record albums?
God, I mean, that just depends on what you're doing. What my best way would be probably like ludicrous to somebody else, and then vice versa. Like they would never be able to do it. Like the way we did the Taj record was in the living room with only a couple mics. Now some people would say, absolutely not. I need like 20 mics on a drum set, and I want to use, I mean, that's so like, it's like, everybody has their own way to do it. Right. And I like different ways as well. It doesn't have to always be vintage gear and like nice old things. Like it can be new style as well. It just depends on what you're doing.
Do you ever think about different rhythms to create songs, like instead of 4/4, 7/8, or 13/9, or others?
I don't come with that as like my initial thought. I think it's more song based, what fits the song. It's maybe fun to mess around with that, like by yourself, trying odd time signatures, but I never start out to be like, I'm going to do a song in 7/8 or something like that. I don't really ever do that.
You can tell us who your inspirations are, or what your inspirations are.
Well, I guess, like I was saying before, Jim Keltner was a big inspiration growing up as a drummer. Steve Earle has always been a huge singer or songwriting inspiration. I think I get a lot of inspiration from books.
Which ones?
Well, I get into different grooves and like modes depending on what I'm reading, and I've been going through all of Larry Brown's books right now, and he wrote, I think one of his books called Joe got turned into a movie, but he's from Mississippi and he was a fireman and then became a writer, and it's just so, the sense of place of the South is so like definitive. And so, but then I also love like George Saunders for a wordsmith and a feeling of like joy, and also of like such deep like sadness all in one nanosecond. He puts you through like the ringer, and so I get very inspired by George Saunders.
Can you remember any lines?
No, but I can tell you the book to read is called 10th of December, and somebody gave it to me during a very trying time in our lives, and we got like a care package of things, and then one of them was just this book, and it sat there for the longest time, and then I finally thought, I remembered, I was like, oh man, Simon gave me this book, I better read it. And I like lost my mind, and I've since then read all his books, so I recommend it to any listeners out there.
What do you think about when you wake up in the morning?
I think about, it's time to make lunch for the kids, and I hope me grinding these coffee beans won't wake anybody up, and and I think those are my two. That's my main thought for a long time in the morning.
What about dreams? Do you ever write your dreams?
I think I always hope that I'm going to write my dreams. I've come up with songs in my dreams that I am convinced are like life-changing. And then when I finally get to like record it, I'm like, this is what I thought was so good. it's like the most like remedial, mundane, like cheeseball thing ever. But in my dream, I was convinced that it was like going to change the world.
What are your future plans?
Well, tomorrow I go home from this long, well, it hasn't been that long. It feels like I've been gone for like 6 months, but it's been only like 10 days. I'm probably going to, I have a children's book idea that I'm trying to, it's basically done. I just have to now go find somebody who loves it. But I'm imagining it's probably just going to be like trying to get a record deal. And so it's going to be like soul crushing and it probably won't happen. But I want to do that, and I want to make more music. I need to get in shape because I feel like I can barely walk after this tour. I don't know how this happened to me, but that's basically what it is. Those three things.
Are musicians better in different countries? What's your experience? You've been around the world, right?
I mean, I think there's probably, you will find an equal amount of really good and really awful musicians everywhere you look. You know, like we could probably walk 10 feet outside of this building and find somebody incredible and somebody just dreadful. So I would say it's fun to go to other countries, and you just have to make sure when you go to another country, you are playing with the right person and you're not stuck with the wrong person.
How do you know when there's chemistry in a song with musicians in the room?
I think you just know, you can know when you meet somebody. I think when you just say hi to the person, they say hi back to you, you know it's going to be good. I don't think I've ever been wrong about knowing ahead of time. You just get a sense of people. And it just happens naturally.
Can you give us an example in your music career?
Well, musicians are so interesting to talk to, and it's so fun to watch them interact with each other. And they're, that was a thing when I was young, is I loved to just be in the recording studio with my dad and the whole band. And it would always be so fun to just watch them talk to each other. And the same thing kind of applies even when you go down to Cuba. Even if you don't understand what they're saying, you just know right away, like when like Ibrahim Ferrer like walked in the room, you're struck immediately that he's gonna blow everybody's minds. Same thing with like the maraca player. Like everybody had the same feel about them, and it's just, there was no jive deal. It was just pure. It was just so pure. You just knew it.
The song Down to the Blood, what's the inspiration there?
Well, that came from my daughter came back from being at her friend's house, this brother and sister, Eleanor and Weston, and she said, "Daddy, Weston bit Eleanor so bad that it was almost down to the blood." And I was like, man, that is the coolest way of putting it. I was thinking, like, as a blues, if it was like a blues song written by somebody has like a complete upside down view of the English language or something. And I was like, and that just put me into this frame of mind. And then there's these kind of scary dolls that followed us from my wife's parents' house to our house. And they've really been through some hard times, and like a lot of their hair has been pulled out. And so I wrote the song about us through the eyes of those dolls. And so basically it was that was Down to the Blood, which is kind of like a familial blood bond that they don't have with us, that maybe they yearn for. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
The photo, where did that come from?
There's a photographer named Scott Strebel who, when I was looking for pictures for the album cover, he had a bunch of great small town motel pictures that were brought to my attention when I was that would probably work, and they did. It was like this perfect shot.
If you could do a movie, what would it be about?
You know, I've thought about this, and I had a good idea. You've just but now that we're talking about it, I'm coming up blank on this one. Movie. I don't know.
Documentary?
My God. These two are stumping me.
There must be something about music, right?
I would probably want to do something not about music.
I see.
I don't like movies about music. I think they always get it wrong, and I don't want to be the one to get it right. I just want to do things about other things.
What's wrong about music documentaries, for example?
Well, there's always like a moment where you see them have like a breakthrough, like this amazing moment where they like have this like incredible breakthrough and I know that's like a device that movies do. There's just something that movies do that just makes it not real. And I know there's probably people who are like, no way, man, there's like blah, 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 some great movie. But I think Hollywood does something, even if they're well-intentioned and they're really smart people and they're amazing at what they do. When they try to do music movies, I just can't watch it.
What about the documentaries? Wim Wenders, he was there doing Buena Vista Social Club. How real is that?
Well, since it's a documentary, it's completely real. And he also has such a great eye for things and a way of telling stories that, that's, yes. But yes, that's a good example. But I don't, music documentaries are good if you like what they're making a documentary about.
One thing with Wim Wenders, was he giving direction, or did you feel he was like a fly on the wall, or a bit of both?
I think he was fly on the wall. They went around scouting some locations and maybe placed you somewhere. You know, like I do this little thing with Kachaito, the bass player, and we were in this neat place over the water, and that was their idea. But there was nothing forced or like fabricated.
When you get up on stage, what are you thinking? Are you looking around? Are you a bit nervous, maybe?
No, maybe I get a little anxious before the show starts, just because I'm like, all right, let's get going here. But then when the show starts, I just have to like keep track of there's a lot going on in my mind. So that
Do you prefer large venues or small venues?
I prefer small venues because it's much more contained. Once it gets really big, I don't know. I feel like what I do works on a really small scale.
Thank you very much. Final words?
No, it was great to talk to you. Thanks for coming to Soundcheck.
Thank you. I will enjoy the gig.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, man,
Oh, you're playing with a fiddle player, right? Yes. So how's that? Is that slightly different to the record?
Well, Rain a big part of Over That Road I'm Bound, which is my last record that I put out. And we do a lot of songs from that. And then we semi-reinterpret the new record through the lens of like her and I. Because a lot of those songs are like drums, guitar.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Exciting. Okay.
Cool.
What do you think of the idea of doing a documentary about the sons or daughters of well-known musicians? Do you think that would fly at all? Or not?
I don't know. It would depend.
On a story, right?
It would depend on a story.
Or a gathering.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around things where people want to do something similar to that,
Sure.
and you really run the gamut of different kinds of sons or daughters, you know, and that came up a little bit in high school, and I didn't, and it was funny. It never came into. It was. Tend to steer clear of other sons and daughters of famous people.
Is there something
I don't know. It
a bit
just,
toxic or?
I don't know. I just haven't found any, you don't seek that kind of thing out. And if it gets thrust upon you, it's like unnatural.
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Richard.
Joachim.
Great
Pleasure.
to meet you. Thanks for talking.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great gig.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
see you
I'll
soon.
see you in a little bit. I'm going to go to my other room.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers. How'd you meet Joachim? How do I pronounce his name?
Joachim.
Joachim. Is that a Spanish name or?
I'm not sure. I mean, it exists in a lot of different cultures. I'm not sure what the root is for his family.
So how did you meet?
I met Rai first, and then Rai and my dad connected musically, and so they did some musical stuff.
Who's your dad?
My dad is Dan Gellert, and because of that, then there was sort of this familial connection. And at one point, I ended up playing with someone who's opening a show for the Cooder Skaggs White tour, and that's when I first met Joachim. And then, because he knows what I do and what I'm into, when he started working on the Uncle Dave Macon project, he called me to work on that.
So how does it feel? Is there a bond?
I'm sorry.
How's the bond between you two musically?
Oh, it feels very familial. Yeah, I feel like we have a lot of musical vocabulary in common. Partly because both of our dads play the banjo a lot and love old time music. So there's a lot of common ground in that realm.
And your music, is it inspired by Irish and Celtic music?
No,
The fiddle.
my background is in traditional American music. So I do old time fiddle. So that's American stuff.
But the American came from the Europeans, is that correct?
That's one of the elements. Yeah, it's an important element in the old-time music for sure. There's a lot of tunes in common, tunes that made the journey from the British Isles.
You sing about Bonaparte, right? You play.
Oh, I played Bonaparte's Retreat, yeah.
What was that?
It's a fiddle tune. It's a traditional fiddle tune from Kentucky.
Is there a story behind that one?
There are a whole bunch of different old-time fiddle tunes that are called Bonaparte's Retreat.
I didn't know that. And the fiddle. Is that different to the violin, and how so?
No, it's not different. It's the same.
It's exactly the same. So why do they call it a fiddle?
It's just another word for it. I mean, usually fiddle is used by people who are playing, vernacular music.
Take a set list. Do you need to document it, or do you think we're good?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So, is it easy to play the fiddle?
I'm sorry.
Is it easy to play the fiddle?
No.
How often do you practice?
Well, I've been doing it a very long time, so at this point I don't know. Practice is, I just play tunes, so.
What's next?
Going home.
After?
My partner and I are finishing up our album this winter, so that's kind of the big project that's cooking back home, is a recording project. And I've got a few things with Joachim in the next few months, and then I'll be touring with my partner in our duo starting in the spring again.
Is there a difference in terms of Nashville? Has it changed, or is it the same as it was 50 years ago, musically?
It's changed so much. It's unrecognizable.
How so?
in every way. It's grown enormously, and there's a huge amount of building going on. It's an unfortunate, actually, pretty unfortunate lack of, I don't know, steering the development in a way that would keep more of the spirit of the place alive. It's a lot of, I don't know, it's a lot of bars. It's not great.
So is there something happening in the States that's new and up and coming, musically?
I'm sorry.
Musically in the States, is there something up and coming that is different or that is connected with tradition?
I'm not the person to ask.
All right. And I heard those songs about New Orleans and places like that. Do they still keep up the traditions there, musically?
Yeah. There's a really, really strong traditional music scene in Louisiana, for sure.
How did you find touring Europe and England, UK?
I love touring in the UK. Great audiences. Really, really receptive. They don't seem to have a sense of separating music by genre. You know, they're happy to have things that are a mashup of different sounds.
You played small towns as well?
Yeah.
Did you go to Ireland?
We were in Ireland in the spring. We did a whole tour over there.
There's a mention about some spirit over there.
Oh yeah,
Can you tell us about that?
You'll have to ask Joachim about that. He angered a fairy.
What a real one.
You'll have to ask him.
Thank you very much. A few last questions with Joachim Cooder here, I think. Yeah.
All of them were trapped.
Trapped in the venue. The metronome.
Okay, what you got here?
There was a tale about your tour in Ireland.
Yes.
There was a ferry.
Yep.
There was a moment there.
Oh, yes.
Would you like?
Where we incurred the wrath of a dodgy ferry.
How so?
Because I was told, this is a long story. I don't know if I can do that. It's about Biddy Early. The ferry, Biddy Early. She was,
Right.
I don't know, Richard. After the show, I'm kind of all spun out.
Sure. The instruments there, fantastic instruments you played in.
Thank you.
The duo was really great. It was very
Thank you.
soulful.
Thank you.
I see that you have the old-fashioned stomper, right?
Yeah, it's just a piece of metal that you tap, and it's like a kick drum, but it's very small.
It's fantastic. Sounded
Thank
great.
you.
And the marimba, the electric one, sounded great. I'm sure that's quite a difficult instrument to play and sing at the same time. What are your takes on that?
Well, it's what I do, so I think what would be harder for me is something like guitar or something that I'm not good at. But it sort of came naturally to me, so it's kind of like, very enjoyable and puts me at ease.
Is that close to percussion, do you think, the way you play it?
I do think it's close to percussion, yes. That's probably why it's... Thank you, Nigel. Do you know where we load out? You're right, Nigel. Thank you for remembering that. I'm just going to put this down at the bottom.
Yeah, I have my stuff there.
Did you find Ireland a mystical place?
Yes, I found it very mystical, and I felt like it was a place I felt I belonged in.
Oh, do you think you've got ancestors from there?
I do have ancestors from... God, where do I have ancestors from? I was told where I have ancestors from. The O'Learys are from Cork. That's where it is. They hail from Cork. Right. Yeah.
And look, I mean, the fairy stories, they used to write about fairies, believe in fairies.
They still do. It's very alive. That's why I was right at home.
You said there was a spirit there.
There was a spirit. It's such a hard story to tell.
In short.
Biddy Early is her name, and somebody said I should write a song about her, and so I said I would, and then everything started going wrong. And then I told that story from stage, and basically like my mic fell off and all these things like disconnected, and I said, must be Biddy Early. And so I stopped the show. That was in Dublin.
Who's Biddy Early?
You guys have to look her up. She put a curse on the County Clare hurling team, and they didn't win for like 400 years. It's a crazy story. Richard, it was so good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the best. This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch.